Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
I'm your host today, Chris Santomassimo. Very excited to sit today with Kasey Cotulla, who's the owner and president of the Delta Print Group in Sacramento, California. Welcome to the podcast, Kasey.
Chris, thank you very much. I'm grateful to be on. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, it's great. I'm excited for the conversation because what we're going to talk about today is mergers and acquisitions and lessons learned in the course of your long history of having done a lot of M&A transactions. You know, the quick background from my perspective is that there's a lot of discussion all the time within lots of industries about consolidation and private equity influence and those things, but particularly in the printing and the packaging industries. A lot of folks talk about consolidation and succession plans, or the lack thereof in some cases. But quite often it's a little difficult to find someone like you who's got the experience having done many transactions to really talk about, you know, what's under the surface and, you know, the lessons you've learned over that history. So really excited to bring you on for that conversation.
Well, thank you, Chris. And you might be over flattering, but I'm happy to share the experiences over the last 17, 18 years, of course.
And how many M&A transactions have you done within the Delta Print Group?
We've
over
done
that time
about
period?
10
Yeah.
actual full, and then certain tuck-ins and buying a book of business along with equipment. So a lot of different deals, from asset purchases to stock transactions and all over the board, but all within kind of our greater Northern California region, Sacramento based, as you noted.
Yep. And you know, maybe you could talk about what your goals were when you embarked on this growth strategy by acquisition. You know, what were you looking to achieve? You know, was it a customer-based focus? Was it we want to get bigger to be more competitive in certain industries, or really a combination of things?
Well, all of those. I would say I'd love to say I had this grand strategy and knew exactly where we'd be 18 years later. But when I first moved, I was within a company, Consolidated Graphics, which owned a lot of printing companies around the country, started by Joe Davis. So I worked they had a few operations here in the Sacramento area. And I moved up through those ranks and was eventually became president of one of the smaller operations here in Sacramento, and then moved over to their largest organization here in Sacramento. And from there, so that was in an environment where I was used to working with sister companies, if you will. That was the format that they had. So you'd work with companies both doing business with as a vendor, as well as using their resources, and allowing our resources being shared, whether it was companies in Texas that were doing work in California, or work that we had across the country through that network. So I was familiar, even though I've spent my whole career in Sacramento, that allowed me a lot of insight into how to manage multiple operations. And so a chance came up in April Fool's Day, 2008, just before the Great Recession, to buy into a sweat equity position with all my savings and second home equity, second mortgage. And I bought 7% of a small printing company with a partner. And between the two of us, then the recession hit. So we were doing a lot of scrambling. It was a small open web printing shop in Sacramento area, and doing 3 or 4 million, 15, 16 employees. And that had come from an environment where, a few hundred employees. And so I had the chops to be able to manage it. It was certainly a straightforward operation. We were able to eventually buy out that founding partner with a sizable SBA loan as we turned things around through the challenges of that 2008 to 2010 period.
Yeah, but you're really pushing. You're really going all in those early stages.
Yeah,
right?
I was all in. I gave up a nice job as a company president, and went into a minority position, and it worked out obviously for us. So I'm grateful for that. But it's not easy, but we had the management experience of how to run a printing company, how to sell into a printing company, and my partner and I, we kind of duplicated what we were both able to do. We were a good complement to each other. And then eventually, when we did buy out the founding partner with a sizable SBA loan for a few $1,000,000, I would say some foolish bank loaned us some money, and we made that work. And then shortly after, we then brought in another partner and bought another printing company in 2011 in the Sacramento area, and that was a complement. It did different work than the type of business we did in web printing over at our initial facility, and
So
expanded from there.
that second acquisition that you did, was it more opportunistic? It was a company that came up for sale and it was local, or was there more of a strategy to broaden the portfolio of offerings that you could provide to your customers?
Well, that's a great question, Chris. We had another person I'd worked with for many years. He had a mailing operation, and we got together and we're looking at what's the viability of our industry and what we could do over the long term, and recognizing that we had this very narrow niche in certain areas. And we started with an assembly of 4 or 5 different principles in different companies: a digital printer, a mailer, a sheet fed printer to complement our web work. And eventually, a couple of those fell away. They really weren't in for it, but we kind of took that model of interacting and creating kind of a hub complementary side, and then looked for an opportunity. And we were certainly familiar with our both competitors and other entities in the business in our site, and then started the conversations. And we reached out to a guy that we'd known that owned a printing company, a little older, and initially approached him, and he was a little lukewarm, and then he had a health scare and became warmer to our approach. So some of that is age related. As principals were getting older, that an opportunity could present itself. So it wasn't necessarily we had a big whiteboard with lots of targets and we're going to acquire these guys here, and then time calendar goes by and we're going to acquire this one. It was a lot of opportunism where we're willing to approach folks, plant the seed, and then if the opportunity presents itself, we were able to take advantage of it. So putting together the capital resources, putting together the deals, a good reputation. I've been in this industry for a long time, in our area for decades, so pretty well regarded. And then once we got a deal done, it gets a little easier for the structure of how to put the pieces together, as well as, I mean, someone's selling you their family business or their business that they built over years or decades or generations even, and convincing them to sell to you is a big deal. And the more that we were able to show we've done it, someone does a seller carryback, and we show that they get paid and we have the resources to complement it, and we're not going in with our fingers crossed. We have a plan, and executing that plan was really a key to us being able to make acquisitions and to make approaches to small and medium-sized print companies that working with us could be good, and you'll get paid and it will work out. And again, in that structure, we did every type. We'd put money down with a carryback as an asset purchase, starting a new entity where the employees were working for one company on a Friday, and on Monday they come to work for a new entity. And then we did stock purchases a few years later of a C Corp family business, and acquired them with a stock purchase, and then kept rolling up every few years from there. And so we've done about 10 plus acquisitions, as I said, and that's everything from complementary printers, mailers, marketing companies, about customers as well. So it's just being open and then figuring out, as you say, they get easier once you do the first one and the second one and so on.
It's if I could maybe pause a minute, just in that the last couple of minutes, I'm hearing some things that echo what we discuss with our clients. Having done a lot of M&A work over the years. Number one, this being a synergistic buyer looking to acquire bolt-ons is a really different and maybe even better in some cases than, say, a private equity play, where there's a lot of pressure. In my experience anyway, I see a lot of pressure to invest the money in that fund quickly or within a finite period of time. And sometimes, there's a bit of a rush, I think, in terms of the acquisitions that are done. Um, in a synergistic play, you've got the benefit of the time to do it on your schedule, a schedule that works for both sides. That integration is going to be a little bit smoother in some cases, I think. Would that explain your experience in that area too?
Yeah, and I think a difference for us is that when we've done these purchases, and I take it really serious. I have 250 employees, and I know every one of them, and it's important to know that I'm not doing this to cut people's jobs. So when we've acquired a company, it's not to, okay, now I can cut staff by 15% and I can eliminate where we're duplicated. It's the initial approach is that we buy a company, and I don't want to give anyone an excuse to lose one customer. So we focus on keeping the business going as it is. And then there's a natural change and a natural attrition, if you will, of folks that maybe they don't want to be part of the new enterprise, or they've worked for the same owner for 15, 25 years and they're just not up for a change. So some of that happens. And then as we look at opportunities, and as we have historically looked at opportunities, we're really looking at how do we add value, how do we buy a business and have it pay for itself over time, and that could be carrying a note back to the seller to make sure that gets paid for, or we're investing ourselves to make sure we get our capital back over time, and time being years. And that doesn't quite fit the private equity model where they're instantly looking to grind down costs. And I don't want to have an unfair characterization of private equity firms in our industry, but it's a little different on our side. That my first approach is to make sure the business keeps doing what it's been doing. If we've made a good purchase to buy not a company that's in distress, but a solid company that maybe the owners or ownership isn't willing or ready to invest more and push themselves into the next, make a commitment in equipment purchases to get them to the next 4 to 7 years, we can come in and say we're willing to take the responsibility for this company to keep going. And there's a lot of focus on multiples in our industry. What's your multiple? What can your discretionary cash from the company generates? Is it 3x, 4x, 5x? And to me, those represent years. So if someone says, here's a 4x deal, and say it's a small company making $500,000 just for a small enterprise for the owner, that means they could stick in the business and hopefully they can keep it going to continue to throw that off. Or we make a deal and I'm basically guaranteeing you'll get paid what you would make over the next 4 years, and I'll take that responsibility, and we'll take that and make it work. And where we really see the opportunities, if we can grow that business or have those pieces grow within our organization, either through complementary resources that we've got, different press, mail, digital capabilities that maybe they don't have or weren't ready or willing to invest at their stage to make that next leap. That's where I come in. I'm always willing to take the call.
Well, I also pulled another really interesting and solid tidbit out about what you said. Your commitment to ensuring that the holdbacks or the carrybacks are actually going to get paid at some point. You take that really seriously. And that contrasts what I've seen in some deals that we've done. When we're advising a client about a holdback, or not a holdback, but rather an earnout. We talk to clients and say, look, that's not guaranteed. There's a certain amount of risk there, and you have to factor the value of that earnout against the fact that you may not have as much control over the ability to earn it as you might as an owner or a 100% owner, and you're going to have to discount that a little bit for the risk. But it sounds like Delta Print Group is taking that pretty seriously to make sure that earnout gets paid, at least in the transactions you've done.
100%. And as we assemble more resources, then we kind of have more and more track record to show everyone gets paid. And it's not a light thing that we take on, that responsibility. When we were maybe a little earlier on with shallower pockets, there might be some risk going along with that. And that earlier on when we were doing deals, there would be an SBA loan. I had bought out a partner with a similar California, had a thing called CalCap that was similar when I bought out one of my partners. But an SBA function could be, or a bank could be involved, or financing side. But we brought in also partners on that second deal. We brought in a very important partner with me, and he put up the cash, and we brought in the expertise to run the business. And then as the money gets paid back, we increased our respective equities so that we became equal partners. So every type of possible deal, there isn't one structure that is the only way a deal could be done. It really is, what does the seller want and need? Some want their cash and they don't want to have anything hanging out there. And that, you get the cash up front, that's going to be a discounted number versus the value of it, because that is fully us taking on the responsibility. We'll also build in, if there is carryback, let's say it's concentrated with one client or a few clients representing an outsized part of their business. We've structured 1, 2, 3 year declining responsibilities, that if that customer goes away in the first year, that there's going to be a discount on the back end. That hasn't ever happened, but then obviously that diminishes over time, because then it's our responsibility. But we've built those in for those companies that are or overly concentrated with 1 or 2 clients representing their book of business. So taking the whole structure as, what's the risk for us? What's the risk for the client? And then coming up with a deal. We had a client, one purchase, I think our third one, where the seller did not want to, he did not ever want to get paid early. He wanted to get a check in the mail every month for 10 years. And so that's the structure. And because I love to pay off debt sooner. But in that case, he didn't want anything. He just wanted the consistency, while another wants their money up front, or they will take the bulk of it up front and the rest in a carryback to give us some protection. So again, every type of deal is really working out what is the benefit, both on their appetite for getting paid back as well as their tax position. Some want to just take that over time, some want up front, some might have family partners that have to be in consideration. So it's trying to structure it. Do they have a lot of basis in the company where getting paid in certain manners makes more sense? We've also done consulting agreements, a little bit in name only, where they can take it as a W-2, and then I'm able to write off that as an expense with it. And we've also, because we've structured things differently, an LLC is a partnership buying a company, and then personally carrying the note, if you will. There's some tax advantages for taking the depreciation, because private equity might be looking at it that they're going to, if you do a stock purchase, not going to get that tax advantage until you sell it, because you can't depreciate it. But right, if you structure it, and since I don't really have a plan to sell, I'm not building this up to sell off to somebody. I want to create a durable enterprise that I've got a great management executive team that runs things, so that I can be on a podcast with you, or doing different deals, or being in front of customers. Those allow us to, that mindset of having, we're not packaging this to get a number to sell off, changes some of the dynamics in our patients on what we're trying to accomplish and what I want to accomplish long term.
It also gives you flexibility on your deal structure, which is important. You know,
100%.
You can look at some of those side issues a little more creatively, or some of the seller's goals a little more creatively, and putting together a transaction that works for both sides.
100%. And that's the latest acquisition we did about 5 or 6 months ago, down south of Sacramento, down in Modesto. It's a modest-sized printing company doing $5 or $6 million a year, and our purchase price in that case I was able to write a check for it, if you will, and that gives me a little bit of an upfront discount, and be able to just manage how the company's going to be structured to pay me out back. I can structure some depreciation, both on initial equipment purchases, but then even amortization. So goodwill then gets amortized over 15 years against other income. But it really is important to have a full understanding of how important that can be in setting up the structure of what your purchasing entity is, as well as the selling entity, so that they can maximize or minimize their tax exposure, and I can maximize my tax efficiency. Even again, that patience is not when I'm looking at a 15-year amortization of a purchase, that's not typically a private equity window. So that allows me
Yeah,
to have that a different approach and different
indeed.
as you said, flexibility.
So if I were an executive at a printing company or packaging company, and I'm thinking about, hey, I want to grow by doing my first acquisition, not sure where to start. What are some of the things that you've learned over time, or you know, the maybe they're the guidepost or the bumpers on either side of the alley, or maybe there are some criteria that you look at. How do you figure out how to get started?
Well, that's a great question, Chris. I would say the first step is being willing to just make a call and talk to someone and say, hey, if you're ever looking or considering a sale, I'm interested in talking further and seeing what might be possible. And sometimes, and I've certainly walked away from more deals than we've done, it's just having a conversation, and then maybe it steps in, and then maybe they're not ready at that point, but you've at least planted a seed. So if they start to think about selling, they're not thinking the only way they can do that is set up something on through a broker, or that their family someone in the family has to buy it, or you're just creating a different structure by planting that seed. And just be willing to hear no, or be told, boy, you're really aggressive, or really you don't have any filters, do you? It's like, I would really feel bad if someone sold their company and made a deal that maybe wasn't as good for them and their employees than at least talking to me. And I've also advised people, it's like, this isn't a fit for us, but this might be the type of buyer you're looking for, and you might have options within your internal people where it might make sense as a management buyout. And I've offered where I might be, say, a funding mechanism for someone to buy their company with internally, because I've done some private credit lending as well, so that I could partner in and take an equity position, but with, as I get paid back, that someone within the company is able to buy in. Or I bought one of my customers, and we had a person that worked within that company, that operation, doing 3 or 4 million a year as a client of mine, and they were ready to either wrap up or try to package it to sell, and was able to approach it to, I can put someone in to run the business, and she put in some funds. We put in some a higher amount, and then as we get the capital paid back, she increases her ownership to eventually being, ideally a 50-50 owner with a modest, she does the work, but she's also getting paid, but she's doing the work and is able to build an equity stake, which is really where the opportunities for some wealth creation within was originally a single mom able to do that, and we're able to support it. And it works for me because she becomes a good owner operator, and not having to wait 10 more years until she's got enough capital to buy a business. Here's an opportunity for her to do it. I get capital back. I can keep a customer relationship, and just being willing and thinking about how opportunities might come across your plate, and be ready, have the resources. And it's been really nice for us, for me. I've bought out my partners, really great partners that have helped grow the company, but they're ready to move on, and I'm ready to keep going. So able to buy out partners and put it all under, as I like to say, Chris, it's all my fault. So I need to make sure I'm making good decisions, and have good advisors and people to say no, because we've always had this one person being the gas, one person being the brake, and I am usually the gas. So it's good to have some advisors and the teams that are able to have the brakes in there, that I can say, slow down, or take a breath. Let's not fall in love with a deal. Let's look at it closer. And we've made mistakes where you've got a long time, high reputation individual in the industry. We approach them. Oh, this has got to be a great business. Things are good. I know their client base. This is going to be a good compliment. And really not doing the full due diligence comes back to bite. Fortunately, it's not been
Yeah.
on a massive scale, but there's never too much due diligence in making sure you have a full understanding of the company, and asking lots of questions, and then running through the scenarios of, what if the key customers go away? What if key clients or key employees go away? What is the risk? What's the opportunity? What happens if it explodes? Do we have the resources to support its expansion? What if it declines? You can't plan for the COVID world or anything like that, but you want to be able to build a resource, a moat resource
Or as
protection.
resilient an organization as you can
Exactly.
build, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so we've reached that point, and now we don't have any bank loans. We've been able to finance our way, self-finance a lot more capex now that we've done in the last few years than we've done previously, where we've done the acquisition. We rather than buying equipment, we're buying acquisitions. Now we've gotten to a size here in Northern California where we are the largest now commercial print and mailer north of Southern California, where they have a lot of competition. And that's given us a good heft and access and gravitational force, if you will, within our industry to attract good people. If there's good clients out in the world, we're at least in front of them and in consideration, and trying to build on that. And I'm just, Chris, I'm grateful. I've got so many great people that work for me and allow us to continue to tackle opportunities and be resilient, as you say. Resilient's a great word, and durable is one of my key words that allows us to continue to look for opportunities and find more. So both
Yeah,
in our region and beyond.
so some of those lessons learned, as I hear them, are number one, having that mindset, and the sort of opening yourself up to the opportunities, and having the uh, I don't know, the being outgoing, I guess, or being a little slightly aggressive in terms of going out to talk to people.
Yeah.
But while also having the catcher's mitt ready to get something incoming as it comes to you. And secondly, the due diligence, can't do too much due diligence, as you said, and
hmm
a lot of modeling is part of that diligence as well to make sure you're going to succeed after the closing.
One thing to keep in perspective, Chris, is that now I've done a bunch of deals. So I've done a lot of acquisitions and bought family businesses and established businesses. And a key thing to keep in mind is that this is typically the only deal that someone's likely done. This is their family business. Maybe they inherited it from somebody. Maybe they founded it 25, 30 years ago, have built it up organically, been through the tough times, worried about making payroll in the past, worried about loss. We're in California, so having employees is always a challenge. So all the things that keep a business owner up at night. And now they're going into an area where they've not done this before, and they'll have preconceptions about, one, what my company might be worth, but also how it works. Do I have to stick around with the company for 2 to 3 years? What's it take? And I always have to keep that in mind, and we do keep that in mind, that this is probably the only time they're going to sell their family business. So you can't make assumptions about what the priorities are for the seller, either individual or partners or a family, and be willing to talk through possibilities. And that's probably the strength that we have, is that because I've done so many different types of acquisitions and deals, that I'm willing to figure out what works best and what might not work. And it's like, this isn't the right time for you to sell your business or to get the most for it. And also, it's not that frank conversation. It's not worth what you think it is. It's kind of a numbers game. This is what it throws out to the bottom line. This is what it's going to make when you're not here. And that's what we have to work with. And then it becomes a matter of both math and time. How does that risk play out? And certainly the business owner has the most insight. They might have some things they're worried about in the background that I don't know about, and I can only discover so much through due diligence. But that's just part of the deal, as well as part of the opportunity.
So to sum that up, you got to be a little bit of a finance guy, a little bit of an accountant, and a diplomat at the same time to sell that position to the seller.
Absolutely. And the counter is, you can come in and have a big paycheck or a big check to write, and that might solve everything, but then you're putting more pressure on that business to succeed. The more you put in that you need to pull out of the company, paying its back, even if you're in our situation where you're being patient on the return of equity and return on investment. And that is not a small deal. So I don't need to take a paycheck to when we buy an operation. I don't have that doesn't have to pay me right away. I've got the ability just make sure the capital gets repaid. And where do we add value, Chris? That's a big thing for me. Is like there might be there's a successful locally run printing company in our area where the owner operator there runs a tight ship. He touches everything, and I don't know that I could run his business better than he runs it. But so that's not as attractive because I can't come in and improve what they do, add value, buy a book of business perhaps. But at his point also, it becomes less valuable for him to sell or have a high value because he touches everything. So I always have to put in place when I'm considering an acquisition, what is the business like when that principal is no longer there? If they're touching every customer, there's a salesperson, estimator, everything, then that it's going to be a big hole, and that's not likely to continue to succeed. If they've got a sales staff, if they've got structured contractual business, if they've got a bench of talent that help are ready to step in and run the company, because some of it would be when I buy a company, it takes resources from my main operation, and I have to consider how much does that hurt or impact my existing operation, my existing management, to put this in place, work it into our organization, and make sure I'm understanding that as well as what it's going to take to raise the people up there or bring in some new hires to step in and complement our organization.
Yep. Kasey, I have to tell you, great lessons. We so appreciate you sharing the benefit of a long history of success as well as success doing your transactions. For folks that might be interested in having a conversation with you, what's the best place to reach you?
Chris, you can just hit our website, deltaprintgroup.com, Kasey at Delta Print Group. I'm always open to connecting, especially people in our industry. And if someone's doing a deal or considering a deal and they don't know what to do, I like printing. I've been in printing my whole life. It's something we have some mastery and familiarity. But I love doing these deals. I like to say, Chris, I am just a clever forklift driver from the Central Valley of California, and I get thrilled figuring out how things can get done, both for me, but even for people outside our print industry and within our industry for sure. But when there's opportunities for a guy that owns a fence company wants to buy another one, and how he might approach a competitor, someone that's buying out a partner, because partnerships are one of those challenges. I've had great partners, but partners start out at an equal level, but over time, one wants to cash out and one wants to keep going. Things change in that. So even just considerations for how you might approach a partner or figure out how to move on to the next phase when not everyone involved wants to do that. Kasey at deltaprintgroup.com, simple email. I love to talk to people about business.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being so generous with your time and your experience. And this has been, just for the folks that might have joined a little late, this has been Kasey Cotulla from the Delta Print Group in Sacramento, California, sharing a wealth of information about his experience with mergers and acquisitions. And I've been the humble host today, Chris Santomassimo from the Think Factory podcast and OGC Solutions, and we'll see you next time.